Hello everybody, this is L5, and today we have something a little bit different. This is going to be Pokemon, so this is definitely different than my normal uploads, but I figured, hey, I joined this thing called the SCL Showdown Championship League or something like that. I think that's what it is. And it's basically a draft style Pokemon tournament thing. And so every week I'll have an opponent, I'll upload some team building video, and then the actual match. So that'll be a weekly thing. So, anyways, um, we all took turns picking Pokemon. We get 3 from each tier: OU, UU, RU, and NU/PU. So these 3 right here, Tornadus, Medicham, and Keldeo, these are my OU picks. And Infernape, Dragalge, these are my UU picks. Now I'm just going to explain a little bit about why I chose what I chose. So my first pick was Tornadus T. Now Tornadus is pretty ridiculous in this format because in this format, if you don't know, you can actually see your opponent's team before you build your team. So like for example, we all have 12 Pokemon that we can choose from. I can see the other person's 12 Pokemon. He can only bring 6, but what I can do is I can prepare for all 12. And Tornadus is a Pokemon where its coverage is so good. Like you can use Hurricane as your main stab, and then it gets so much good coverage. Like we have Heat Wave if they have like a Ferrothorn or a Scizor, which I don't think anyone picked Mega Scizor. But anyways, you have Heat Wave as an option, or if you don't need Heat Wave, you can replace that with Superpower and give this a Life Orb and give it Knockoff because that's one of the best moves in the game. And these 3 moves have pretty good coverage, but sometimes you're going to face a team of 12 where you're just going to need to have that one extra coverage, and that's for Life Orb Torn, which is ridiculously strong. Just because of its move pool is just amazing. Like say you have a Suicune or something. Suicune not going to be taking Hurricanes too well, but it is going to probably miss more than it's going to hit because it is Hurricane. So you can just throw on that Grass Knot or something, and you can get that reliable damage off on it. Or for example, you can hit U-turn for momentum, or taunt if your opponent's team is very defensive and does not appreciate the fast taunt that Tornadus T provides. It also has this wonderful ability in Regenerator, giving it 33% of its health every time it switches, which is pretty amazing, especially when you pair that with an Assault Vest. Now, Assault Vest, if you don't know what this is, it boosts your SPDF by 1.5 times, so 150%, but you can only use damaging moves. So you won't be able to use Taunt on this if it's Assault Vest, but you can just throw on, like even if you don't need any more coverage, Air Slash for the more reliable flying coverage. And then look at these stats. This speed is amazing, especially in this league where you're generally not going to be facing super fast teams. But yeah, you can just throw on that, and 375 speed, that's going to be very hard to outspeed, unless they're running a Choice Scarf user. Anyways, moving on to my next pick, which is Mega Medicham. So obviously, I want a pretty strong Mega for my team, and this is basically the strongest of all Megas. This thing has very few Pokemon that can switch into it, and in the League format, I can see exactly what's going to switch into it, and then I can prepare the moveset accordingly. So, like say, I really need the priority. I can go for dual priority, the Fake Out Bullet Punch combo. Yeah, you have High Jump Kick. This thing is amazingly strong. See, base 130 power stab, that's going to be quite a lot. Over 200, I think. Is it over 200? Yeah, it'd be 65. No, it'd be base 195 after stab, if I'm doing my math correctly. If I'm not, too bad. But what really makes this Pokemon shine is its ability, Pure Power. Look at this. This Pokemon's attack is doubled. Now you're thinking, oh, yeah, doubled, that's pretty good, right? Slap an Adamant Nature 252 EVs, that's 328. Then you double that, so it's 600 and 56 attack. Now, I don't know about you, but I believe that is a lot. So anyways, moving on to the next Pokemon. We have Keldeo. Now, I wanted a fast water type. You know, Keldeo is just the best at that. There were a bunch of choices in OU. A lot of them got picked. If I didn't choose Keldeo, I would have gone for Tyranitar, because Tyranitar can Pursuit Trap a lot of what Mega Medicham is weak to. But Tyranitar was already taken, so I chose Keldeo, because Keldeo is just pretty strong. It can go Choice Scarf. It can go, yeah, I'll just throw a Choice Scarf on there, because, you know, the speed is very good. Base 108, slap a Choice Scarf, you're going to be outspeeding pretty much anything other than a super fast Scarfer. Or you can throw on the Choice Specs, and this thing is strong. Base 129 special attack, it's going to hit like a truck with those Hydro Pumps, and you can even throw Focus Blast on there if you really want power, even though you're going to miss every turn, but that's okay. So anyways, I just chose Keldeo because my team, it's turning out pretty offensive. So Keldeo provides a nice offensive check to a lot of threats, like Weavile. Weavile completely wrecks Tornadus. It outspeeds and knocks it out with Icicle Crash. Keldeo switches into that easily and can threaten it out with a Secret Sword slash Focus Blast slash anything really, because Weavile is really frail. And this thing just gives me a good switch into a lot of stuff that Tornadus and Medicham can't really deal with. And so after that, this is all my OU picks. We go into UU. Now I picked Infernape as my first choice. Now Infernape is really amazing in the League format because you can see the opponent's team, and chances are they're going to be weak to some kind of Infernape. Now you can use Nasty Plot, and that'll raise your special attack by 2 stages, basically doubling it. Then you can go for Fire Blast, Focus Blast if you want to miss, Vacuum Wave for priority, or say Nasty Plot isn't really going to do very much versus the opponent's team, you can just slap on a Swords Dance. Now Swords Dance raises your physical attack by 2 stages, doubling it. And with these perfectly split attacking stats and like not terrible HP defense SPDF, along with a pretty amazing speed, same as Keldeo, this Pokemon is really good if you can see what your opponent's team is, because you can also say you don't really need the setup. You can just go for the Focus Sash lead set with the Stealth Rock, Taunt, etc. I won't get too in-depth with all that, but Infernape is just a great Pokemon. Next we go on to Reuniclus. Now Reuniclus can do lots of things. It can be defensive with Regenerator or Magic Coat, Magic Guard. That's the one, yeah. You can also make this offensive with Trick Room, Life Orb. You can make this Calm Mind defensive, and you can even make it, you know, all sorts of things. Because these stats are pretty well rounded. The base 110 HP makes it really bulky, really hard to take down, especially with the Magic Guard making it immune to Toxic. It's basically the UU Tears Clefable, because this thing can set up and win all by itself. Now, its typing is not quite as good as Clefable, but it does sort of do the same thing. It just sits there, and it sets up and wins. So I'm just going to move into my next pick, which is Dragalge. This is my last one for the UU tier, and I actually chose a BL2. That's borderline, I think. It's basically what's banned from the lower tiers, but not used enough to be considered in the UU tier. Now Dragalge is pretty good because what I can do is lots of stuff with this. Say my opponent's team is basically entirely grounded. I just throw on the Toxic Spikes, and that's going to be doing 12.5% every turn to a grounded Pokemon that isn't Steel or Poison type. Now that adds up very quickly, and hazards in general are just really good. And one other thing about this thing is bulky, especially defensively. I mean, look at that, base 123. You can max that out, max HP, max SPDF, and you could do that and toss on the Calm Nature, And look at those stats, 334 HP, 379 special defense. That's going to be hard to take down if your opponent is not prepared for it. Alternatively, you can go max special attack, maybe a little bit of speed creep for your opposing team. Like say there's an Electros. I know someone has an Electros. I believe it's 140, or is it 130, 138, I believe? Something like that. Maybe a little bit more. It's like around this amount to outspeed it. I know because I was doing some team building stuff earlier. And I was just seeing how much speed it takes to outspeed Electros, even though you don't really need to outspeed it because Electros can't really touch this. But then it can get the Volt Switch momentum anyways. I'm getting kind of sidetracked. So Dragalge is really good. You can also go for a choice specs if your opponent doesn't have a Dragon Resist. You can just spam those Draco Meteors. Every time you come in, something will die. And so yeah, that basically concludes my OU and my UU picks. And let's go into my RU and my NU. So I picked for my first one, well actually this was my third pick. I believe I chose Honchkrow first, just because my team really wanted a strong dark type. And with the base 125 attack Sucker Punch, it also adds some priority on there. Along with the ridiculously strong Stab Brave Bird, just slap a Life Orb, or put Moxie on here, Moxie Life Orb, Sucker Punch. That's going to be doing a lot. You can also use Pursuit on this if you need to really get rid of a Ghost type for Mega Medicham. And yeah, this is just a solid pick for my team. It is kind of slow compared to the rest of my team, barring Reuniclus and Dragalge. Base 71 is not too good, but, you know, with some team, like just team preview, you can see exactly what you want to outspeed, and just, like, tailor your set to exactly what you need. The next thing I chose was Dugtrio. Now, Dugtrio gets this nice ability. It's called Arena Trap. It says illegal right here, but I can assure you it does get Arena Trap. And this basically prevents foes from switching. And that's a big deal because, you know, my team, it appreciates a few things getting out of the way. And with Dugtrio, you can get an Earthquake, obviously, and you can get rid of those Steel types if you would like to. A lot of those Steel types that would, you know, counter Tornadus T, even though it has Heat Wave, some Steel types can switch in on that, like Heatran. I don't think anyone chose Heatran, actually. But anyways, Dugtrio is great at getting rid of the stuff that you need it to get rid of. You can even throw Toxic on here if you need to definitely Toxic a wall, because they can't switch out on your Dugtrio most of the time. Unless they're Flying type or Levitate, they can't switch. So you basically get a 90% chance to get a Toxic off on there. You can throw a Focus Sash, and then mostly you're going to see Focus Sash, not Focus Band, Sash. And this is basically a Pokemon that is very good, especially with my fast offensive team that I've got so far. And this thing's speed is pretty good, its attack is mediocre, and the rest of its strats are pretty garbage. But really the only things you need are its speed and attack, because what it's going to do, it also, well, it's going to trap and kill the stuff that I need it to. One thing that you can use Dugtrio for is it kind of has to, what am I trying to say here? It changes the way your opponent has to play. Like if your opponent sees the Dugtrio, they're not going to mindlessly switch into their Steel type because they know there's a chance I could just double switch into Dugtrio and then just completely trap that and get it out of the way. So that's one thing about Dugtrio that I really like. It changes the way that your opponent has to play. And yeah, I don't think there's much else I can explain about this. We're going to move on to my last RU pick, which is going to be a Selgor. Now I'm very surprised that a Selgor wasn't picked up earlier, but since it was still there for my third pick, I was like, hey, Spike Stack plus the amazing speed and decent special attack, I'll take it for the RU pick. Now this Pokemon's abilities are kind of not too useful. You got Unburden, but you're already so fast that it doesn't really matter. You can use Focus Sash on this with Spikes, Taunt, Final Gambit, and Bug Buzz. You could also use Life Orb, because this thing's special attack is actually pretty good, and its coverage isn't bad, by any means. You can also use Choice Specs if your opponent's really weak to Bug, because there's not a lot of people that prepare for a strong Bug type. It's just not something that you really think about when you're team building. So if your opponent's team is really weak to, say, Bug plus Energy Ball, like their only switch in is weak to Energy Ball, you can you can slap a choice specs on there and do a lot of damage. So anyways, that concludes my RU picks. I'm going to move into my NU/PU. Now my very first pick, I chose Avalugg. Now Avalugg provides the rapid spin that I kind of need some hazard control. I have a bunch of hazard setters, so I don't really want to go for defog. And this thing's stats, look at this defense. Base 184, 404 uninvested, plus a pretty solid attack stat. You can even go choice banded with this if you really want to. And the base 95 HP is pretty good. The only thing it lacks is speed and special defense. You're never going to be using a special attacking Avalugg anyways. So this thing's abilities, you can use Sturdy if your opponent has a very strong fire type that you need a backup check to. You can survive this and then throw back a Stone Edge, I believe that gets Stone Edge. Yes? Yeah, Stone Edge. Or an Earthquake, but Stone Edge hits Charizard, and Mega Charizard is pretty strong, and it does a lot to my team. That's basically my first week's matchup is versus a Mega Charizard X team. And if I have leftovers, or not leftovers, like Rocky Helmet, plus Sturdy, he'll have to go for Flare Blitz, plus a Stone Edge / Earthquake. It's probably going to be doing a lot of damage. But anyways, this thing's defense is just so good, I couldn't pass it up. And the next one I chose is Klinklang. Now Klinklang is a pretty underrated threat. I actually saw Zamrock using this in OU a few days ago, and it actually put in some work. So I was like, hey, I felt inspired. I'm going to choose Klinklang as a backup setup sweeper. I don't really have too much setup on my team. If you look over here, we have Infernape and Reuniclus. Those are the only two things that can really set up. I guess Keldeo with the subcom line, but that's going to be less common, I feel. But anyways, so Klinklang gives me the setup with the shift gear / gear grind stuff. You can use sub lefties, and it's just a steel type to give me a switch into Dragon and Fairy, which my team really does appreciate. Now I'm going to move on to my last Pokemon, which is going to be Raichu. Now Raichu is a pretty speedy Pokemon. It fits with my fast offensive team so far. It has perfect split attacking stats, so I could go physical or special, whichever one hurts my opponent's team the most. Now the HP and defense are pretty bad. The Spit F is mediocre, but one thing I can do is I can use like Life Orb, Lightning Rod, and this gives me a switch in to electric type attacks. You can't just mindlessly click electric, but I can go for like Nasty Plot, and or like, does it get Swords Dance? I don't think it does. No, it doesn't. So Nasty Plot would be your setup of choice, and you can just plow with an unprepared team with this Pokemon. So anyways, that concludes my 12 picks for the SCL, and I'll see you in a team building video soon. Alright? That'll be all for today. See you guys next time.